welcome back to Olympic Cards and Comics Virtual Free Comic Book Day. We're talking now with creator Greg Rucka, a good friend of mine and a fantastic writer, novelist, spinner of tales, writes fantastically well when he's angry. He's written just about every major Marvel and DC character there is, from Superman to an acclaimed run on Wonder Woman to CHECKMATE to Wolverine to The Punisher to numerous creator-owned properties, many of which have or will one day make the transition to mass media, film, television, including Lazarus, Black Magic, The Old Guard, and Stumptown. So once again, welcoming you to our store. Welcome back.
How nice to be there. And I see that the check cleared for the intro, so you were pretty much on script. I appreciate it.
That's why we do PayPal. So
yeah.
So I'm going to just jump in with one of the kind of default questions we're asking everybody. You know, you've been doing comics a long time, and clearly you read them before doing them professionally. What was the gateway drug? What was the thing that made you go, I want to tell stories for a living? What was it? Was it a comic? Was it a novel? Was it a combination of all of those?
Wow, that's actually a well-phrased and different take on it. I don't know what the moment was. I knew that writing happened. I knew it was a thing people could do. And I grew up reading a lot of, different things. You know, I was reading PI stories and sci-fi and really into British late 70s sci-fi TV, you know, in high school and sort of pre-high school. And I came to The Prisoner early, you know, before I had the first clue of what it was I was watching.
Someday you're going to have to explain it to me. I'm not sure I ever got it.
Yeah, well, but I think that's half the beauty of it. Mm-hmm. You know, and I mean, I can remember picking up those, they used to do the small black and white digest reprints of like the Kirby Lee early Marvel stories. And I can remember begging my mom for those in the supermarket at a very young age and getting those and getting the Archie Comics versions as well. And I have an older sister who has Downs, and the Incredible Hulk TV show, you know, was on when we were growing up, and she had a crazy crush on Bill Bixby / Lou Ferrigno, because I think to her there was no differentiation, right? Here was this very sensitive, very kind, empathetic guy, you know, as Bixby's Banner, who would turn into this, you know, huge rage machine, yet who never actually endangered an innocent. Like in the TV show, you cannot, to my recollection, find a moment where he is actually guilty of having done harm to someone who didn't have it coming. Despite Banner's protestations, you know, to the fear of the creature and so on. In the meta, as you watch that show, and I think my sister understood it, right? The Hulk was a hero. He was always a good guy. And I remember finding a comic book store in Monterey, California. I couldn't have been, I was in 5th grade. I remember I was in 5th grade. So what, 10, 11? Okay. And they, at that time, were publishing the Doug Mensch Incredible Hulk magazines that would have like a main Hulk story and then a Moon Knight backup. And I got one of them, and this was shortly after 3 Mile Island had happened. So not only am I dating myself and, you know.
Literally dating yourself.
Yeah, literally. But I remember taking that, and I bought it thinking she would love it. And of course, she had no interest in it, just none. But I took it to school with me, and I tried to copy panels, and I discovered very early I couldn't draw to save my life. I mean, I cannot draw. And I've tried. I can't. It is not in my skill set. So, you know, I danced with stories for a long time. I played a lot of tabletop role-playing games throughout high school and into college. And by the time I got to college, I was writing my own stuff. But it wasn't really until I think my junior year where I was like, maybe I could be a writer. I thought I was going to be an actor for a while. I thought I was going to be an academic for a while. I thought I was going to direct theater for a while. I had all sorts of exciting visions for my life, and instead I ended up here. So, you know,
I secure bunker.
Yeah,
beneath the earth.
Look, you and I have known each other a real long time now. You've heard me say this before. Writing isn't a profession; it's a goddamn illness. Mm-hmm. All right, this is a debilitating illness. Nobody in their right mind would say, you know what I want to do? I want to spend 18 hours a day alone with voices in my head, trying to get them to come out in an articulate fashion through the manipulation of 26 somewhat arbitrary symbols arrayed in the right order that somehow, when done properly, can convey an emotional and even cathartic response. I mean, that's just wrong. There's no logic that brings you there. There's no level of sanity that says this is healthy. And it isn't healthy. It is not a healthy lifestyle. I mean, there's a reason why so many writers are misanthropists, alcoholic, chemically dependent, or dealing with any number of health issues. And the same goes for the artist. I mean, it's just it is not you think when you start, I'm a writer because I want to, and then you discover, no, I'm a writer because I have to.
That's usually my answer. It's I write for the same reason alcoholics drink.
Yeah.
Compulsion, I can't not do it. So
yeah, and that really is it. And it's taken me years. I mean, for a while, early on in my career, I would hit days where, for whatever reason, I couldn't write. Things were going on, and I just never had a chance to sit down and write. And after 3 or 4 or 5 of those days, I am horrible to be around. Like, my mood craters. I am sour, somber, grumpy, grouchy. And it doesn't matter what I do to try to get out of it. I can't. And then eventually I go like, oh, right. Mm-hmm. And then I'll sit down and I'll do it. And even if what I write is something that nobody's ever going to see, it helps. I feel better. It's an addiction. It's an illness, So, yeah.
Yay. So sort of being in the performing arts. Look at my damage. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, kids, don't do writing, I mean.
This is your brain on writing, and it's just
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and look, the fact of the matter is, and Harlan Ellison was, renowned for actively discouraging people to become writers. But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that the way you're a writer is you do it no matter what.
Yep. Yeah, if you can be discouraged away from doing it, then you weren't supposed to do it. Yeah.
That's exactly it.
All right. All right, let's see. So one of the questions I am to ask you is...
I like how you snuck the qualification in there.
Was about your favorite character to write. But I'm going to put a little top spin on that. What's the character that you approached that you were surprised by the most? The one that you were like, wow, I didn't expect it to be like this. I didn't expect it to be this fun. Or I didn't realize I had this affinity for the character.
That's easy. It was Punisher.
Yeah, okay.
Like, Wild Horses wouldn't have gotten me to that character. And Steve Wacker was insistent that he felt that I should write Punisher and that I would do a good job. The latter half I cannot comment on, but I remember, because when coming up in comics, when I was reading Punisher then, when Punisher was around then, he read to me like a right-wing power fantasy. And not a very compelling or good one, like not engaging. It was as if somebody was like, hey, you know what's cool about Dirty Harry? The part where he shoots people. And it was just not my thing, man. So when Whack, and he came at me hard. I mean, he came at me 4 or 5 times on it. I was like, no, you are crazy, no. And then I started looking, then I made the mistake of actually really looking at it and sort of unpacking it. And again, looking at, and I think you can find this in most of my work, certainly for the big two. It tends to be defined by me looking at a character and seeing something that I think others may have missed or have not given proper illumination to. And that's always the in for me. And with Frank Castle, the in was sort of this realization that for all of the really good Punisher stories that are out there, and there are a lot, I mean, viz. Garth Ennis, I felt that almost everybody had gotten him wrong. That this goes to a bigger approach question, right? Which is, right. If you're writing for the big two, you have to accept those universes. You can't ignore them. You cannot decide that, and all evidence to the contrary of the big two doing this, they shouldn't. You cannot go, oh, I'm writing, Batman stories, so I don't have to pay attention to anything else in the DC universe. If you're writing a Batman story, you have to write a Batman story knowing that if somebody is going to try to set off a nuke in Gotham, Superman will show up. You can't write that story without acknowledging Superman. And it is, to me, indicative that the reason that Garth's Punisher is so successful is that it divorces entirely from the Marvel Universe.
Almost. It's just Nick. Nick Fury is the only other one, and it's his Nick.
And it's his Nick that comes out of his Frank.
Yeah.
Right? And no offense to Garth, but that's cheating, dude. That was totally cheating. Right? And if you don't have the option to cheat, if somebody has not come to you and said, you can do Punisher Max, whatever you want, but says, no, I'd like you to do a Punisher book in the Marvel Universe, then the very first thing you have to ask yourself is, why has Captain America not stopped this guy?
Yep.
I mean, that, I can understand why the X-Men are like, dude, not our lane, leave him be.
Yeah.
Right? We've got enough problem. People hate us already. But you cannot have a Manhattan that has Spider-Man in it and has the Punisher in it at the same time and not have them in conflict. Which then, and then if that is the premise you accept, right, that's a truth. That's got to be true. So then it becomes, well, then the reason Frank still exists isn't because nobody wanted to write that story. It's, you have to come up with the in-universe answer. And the in-universe answer is Frank is very, very careful. And in a universe then where everybody has a superpower and he doesn't, there's a whole character right there, and if you're honest to that, you get, I mean, that's a vein that still hasn't been remotely tapped. I mean, remotely tapped. It hasn't, not even close to exhausted. You could do so much just on the fact that he manages to exist and survive. And what that does for all these other characters, I mean, I'm very fond of Logan's relationship with Frank in that Punisher run, and in the in the miniseries, because that's Logan being like, oh no, dude, I get you, I get you, versus a Spider-Man who absolutely cannot.
What is wrong with you?
Exactly. I mean, literally cannot conscience it and shouldn't. If you're fair to Peter, that Frank is permitted to continue being Frank is, it's literally telling him up is down and black is white. I mean, it violates the fundamental order of what he is, right? For a character like, say, Steve, you get some interesting nuance there. And it was a lot of fun to sort of play with that. But going in, man, I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then, oh my God, I was like, I love him. This is so cool.
It was a good run, and what a fan of the character I am, and I thought that was a fantastic run. I particularly liked the moment where Thor and Frank have a beer. I love that issue. That is just one of my favorite beats in that story. It's like, it never would have occurred to me. It's one of those, like, if you're a magician, you watch another magician do a cool thing. It's like, oh, I never would have thought of that. Like, that was the moment for me. I was sitting here in my office reading it, just cackling. Like, that's perfect.
It made such sense to me that Thor would be like, oh, all right, I shall go deal with this. And then he meets this guy who's like, oh, you're a pure warrior. Yeah. Oh, I get you. I totally get you. Yeah, they're all too uptight.
Yeah.
Sure. So.
It was great. So one of the follow-up questions is about, like, is there a character you wish you could get your hands on? Putting aside any, like, personal politics or the realities of dealing with an editorial department that you may not be in sync with or whatever. I'm going to throw another top spin on that.
Yeah.
What's the most obscure character that you've read in mainstream comics that you're like, oh, I could have some fun with that? That'll never happen. Like, is it? Power of the Geek? Like, I would have a ton of fun on that book, but nobody wants that book.
Okay, but see, my dirty little secret is that I'm remarkably ignorant. Like, of so many people who have come into comics, right? Writers who have come to comics, they literally were like, just baptized in the waters of the golden and silver ages.
Yeah, I'm talking sick tomorrow.
Right, but yeah. Okay, but you know what I mean. Like, you talk to a Busiek or a Wade. These guys who can cite chapter and verse. Most comics before the 1970s hold very little interest to me. I do not have the ability to read really old Golden Age Batman or Wonder Woman and go, wow, this is terrific. My problem is I look at it and I go, this is bad. This is poorly written. These are bad comics because they're not truly what the medium has evolved into. They're not really sequential stories. What they really are heavily annotated picture books. They've literally taken pages from a picture book and put them all on the same page as panels. It's not really until you get primarily into the 70s where all of a sudden storytelling is happening on the page, where what is happening in one panel propels to the next panel. It's not linked by a caption. It's not linked by a voiceover, right?
All right.
Visual storytelling to me doesn't really start to manifest until the 70s. And, I admit that's a prejudice, that's a bias. But the result of that is that my depth and breadth of knowledge is impaired. There are things I know a lot about, and there's a lot of stuff I know nothing about. So if you were to if you were to ask me, who would you like to get to that nobody has really gone to town on? It's a two-part answer, because for that, I still want to do the Mademoiselle Marie thing that was pitched like ages and ages ago. Mm-hmm. I would love to extrapolate on the idea that you and I introduced in our Checkmate run, that it's not a person, it's a title, it's a position. It's what Bond should be, mm-hmm. right? It's what it means to be 007. You are given the position of the Mademoiselle Marie. And I love the idea, and Burchett and I had once tried to pitch this and got shot down as a Vertigo series, was normally there's only one Marie. It's during the Second World War that there are several. It becomes the code name for a particular type of agent in the resistance. And being able to tell their stories and being able to have 6 or 7 or 8 of them, and you frame that series by the invasion and the liberation. So the series takes place while France is occupied, right? And that allows you to have some survive. It allows you to kill some of them. It allows you to pass it on. You can do a lot of really interesting stuff there. And it's going to burn me to my dying day that's a story that's never going to get told. I think my favorite issues of the Checkmate run are the Trautmann Mademoiselle Marie issues.
Those were fun.
I just loved it. And, the glory of Chris Somney and the idiocy of Dan DiDio in that moment going, this is a comic book, not a freaking Vertigo book. It's like, well, guess what? He's, you missed the boat there, Chief.
Chris is an astonishingly talented guy.
Yes, and he is. And an astonishingly nice guy to boot. So, and he killed those issues. He did an extraordinary job on those issues. So, if you're on the offbeat, on the left field side, Marie, absolutely Marie. And then mainstream, I'm not sure what I would do if you said, do 24 issues of Captain America. I'd love to try it. I never got a really good bite at that apple. And I think there's a whole lot there that, to me, there's so much pathos in the character when done well. It's what the movies do well, and what the comic almost invariably doesn't do well, is embrace that pathos of a man out of time, and a man who is unerring in his belief of, not unerring, but unwavering in his belief of what is just and what isn't. And that is more than what is right and what is wrong. It's what is just, what is fair, I find that really compelling, and sort of companion to that, I feel everybody does Black Widow wrong. So, but that's sort of my thing. I look at stuff and I'm like, hey, you're doing it wrong. You did it wrong. I wouldn't do it like that. I wouldn't do it that way. You're doing it wrong.
I know my own experience. This isn't one of the pre questions here. So, but I've never asked you this. I know I have a really hard time after I've left the book.
Yeah.
Reading what comes next. The only exception to that was Brandon Jerwa following me up on Vampirella.
Right.
Because he did this cool trick where he had taken my very grounded, like kind of dealing with the core of the character and moving away from some of the extraneous weirdness of it. And he went full bore, like back into the old Warren stuff. Like there were UFO bases on the moon and this like war between chaos and order and all this stuff I wasn't dealing with because I was just dealing with the monster fighting. Right. And it is still very palpably in the same universe.
Yeah.
Which is a huge trick, right? Because it's a massive tonal shift, and I was very impressed with that and enjoyed it. Like, and didn't run into that. Oh, I wouldn't have done that. But virtually anything else where someone has taken on the book after I've left it, I can't do it. And it's no judgment on those creators. It's just I don't want to feel like, oh, but you can do this, or So how do you?
See, I do think it's a judgment on those creators. It's funny. I've been doing this weekly chat with Mimi Chan, and she's been putting it up on her Culture Chat podcast. And I was talking about this with her this morning because we talk on Thursday mornings. See, because I think one of the things that was going on there is that Brandon, and that he wasn't throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, no, he was definitely trying to build on the foundation. Right,
and the key phrase of what you just said was he's doing all these different crazy-ass things, right? But it's still the same universe. The problem with almost every change in a creative team is that they quote unquote change direction, and everybody wants to make it theirs. And that's why I can't do it, right? Because, and I was guilty of this for the longest time. It's different when editorial comes to you and they say, we want you to do a different thing. But what happens more often than not is you leave a book, and the next person who comes in, the first thing they try to do is pave over you. Now, they may, not even may, they will never say so in an interview, right? They're never going to say, I hated what Rucka did. They're not going to do that. What they are going to do is they're going to say, well, we're going to go in a different way, right? And then what they do systematically, and this has been going on in mainstream comics for 40-odd years now, is they proceed to then try to erase everything that the previous team has done and built and reinvent the wheel. And it's disrespectful. It is arguably insulting. And it's actually a zero-sum game, because what it says is there is no merit there. And I think it is driven more than anything by ego. At least it was for me in those times that I've done it. And I am guilty of this. I did this, early in my career a lot. And you see it over and over again. People talk about my Batman. It's my Batman. No, he's not yours. He's Warner Brothers. Get in there and exercise stewardship. Stop pretending that you made the character up. Stop it. Your job is, and in the best light, you have been granted the privilege of caring for a pop culture icon for a time being. And that means your job is to improve it, all right? To shine it, to tell cool stories with it, to make it better than when you got there. But I think this goes back to Frank Miller, not because Miller did it, but because Miller's success in presenting here's a different way to look at, say, Batman, to look at Daredevil. We've got a whole bunch of creators who came up on that stuff. That's the milk that they were raised on. And so they go, well, that's my chance to make the cover of Rolling Stone. It's like, no, it's not. It really isn't. Really isn't. Chuck Dixon and I do not agree on almost everything possible. But he once said, and I absolutely agree with this, in regards to, he was telling the story about going to a signing with his collaborator on one of the Bat books, might have been Robin. And they get there and like the line is around the block and so on. And the artist said something like, wow, look at all these people who are here for us. And Dixon, they're not here for us. They're here for Robin.
Yeah.
And I think that is crucial to remember. And I think one of the worst things that's happened, in particular in mainstream comics, is the indulgence in ego of the creators.
First pieces of advice you ever gave me, and I have carried it with me. I actually have it written down in a piece of paper in my wallet. And you said, never mistake fame in comics for actual fame.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah. It ain't the same thing at all, man. Yep. It's a weird industry, So, I mean, I've tried. There have been books where I have tried. But in those cases, and like I say, it's the predominant case, when somebody comes aboard and they are actively trying to erase your contributions, why would you stick around to be kicked in the mouth over and over again? I only have so many teeth.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And even if it isn't done with malice, oftentimes, and I don't begrudge creators coming in with their own stories to tell. Of course they should. But the need to diminish what came before as a result becomes really problematic, I think. There's a lack of respect. And I've been guilty of it. Like I said, I have no leg to stand on here when I throw this stone. You know.
All right, fair enough.
You know, no, I really, I was horrible back in the day. I would like to think I am more respectful now, you know, that I try to acknowledge where there is merit in what has come before, even if I disagree with the take, even if I disagree with the approach. But it's a trick. It's hard to do.
Yeah, it's very hard. I have a hard time with it. Red Sonja would be a great example of that. Like, I got asked a million times, like, "Oh, what did you think of what came after?" And it's like, I can't look at it right now.
Yeah.
I still had untold stories. And again, I don't think in this case that Gail Simone went out of her way to steamroller stuff. And she's always been very, very gracious about acknowledging my work publicly and stuff. So, and for the longest time, boy, I just didn't want to look at it.
Yeah.
She got the artist I wanted, you know, there was a little bit of like, oh, I could have been doing this, you know, and going back and reading it later and realizing that, she had just taken the character and went a different way. It literally went a different way. Did not discredit anything that had come before or anything. And, you know, so there's no feud. I want to make sure I'm clear about that. But yeah, that was a hard one for me, because that was a character going, you know, like, that was the one that surprised me. Mm-hmm. When I got offered that job, it was hey, you want to do an issue of Red Sonja? And I was like, all right. I hadn't had a burning desire to tell a Red Sonja story, but it's like, it's the closest I'm ever going to get to Conan.
Sure.
So sure, why not? And the next thing I knew, I was like, oh, and then I could do this, and then I could do this, and I could do this. And I think that's going back to our earlier part of the discussion. I think that's where the compulsion is for me. I think that's the buzz. That's I've just pounded the whiskey, and now all the ideas are coming, you know, like,
and then. Yeah.
We chase the and thens, I think.
Yeah. I think, I mean, to this day, I have not read an issue of Batwoman since I left. And I know everything, you know, I know all about what happened. You know, I know all the stories because people have told me. Mm-hmm. And I just get angrier and angrier. And it's now been over a decade. But I cannot, because to me, they screwed up. And they screwed up enormously. And the thing that I find most painful about it is that Jim was on the book. So he made these choices knowing full well, you know, everything we had talked about, everything we had discussed, the circumstances of my departure. There's no way I can look at that in any sort of abstract or impartial or objective fashion and not take it personally. And I know it, whether it is or not. So why would I do that, right? Why would I want to throw logs on a fire that doesn't need to burn? You know,
that's probably the healthiest choice. Yeah.
There's no reason for me to carry that around. So
let's move this in a slightly different direction. Just a couple more questions to go. Sure. Tell us about your coat.
Tell you the one I am wearing right now?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to have to move in the camera. So let's see if this will work. I'm going to try to stand up. Tell me if you can see the back.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
That is the main character's weapon from your acclaimed Image Comics creator-owned series with Leandro Fernandez, The Old Guard.
So this is, you can kind of see. This was a gift from the director of the movie, and I think also the editor, but I suppose it mostly comes down to Gina Prince Bythewood, who's directed the Old Guard movie. It wrapped filming in August of 2019. It's going to be out this summer on Netflix. And yeah, this is the post-production sweatshirt, and she had asked Leandro, she shot me a message at one point saying, hey, can you put me in touch with Leo, you think he would just draw a picture of the LAZARUS? And I was like, yeah, he would do it in a heartbeat. Why? And she said, I'm just working on the thing. And then both Leo and I got the Post sweat jacket. So this is my favorite piece of swag from the production. And Leo and I each have one. And Leo and I were really not involved in Post. I did more than Leo did in Post. I was writing some ADR lines and things like that. But yeah, there's an actual real life movie. It exists right now. There is a locked cut, and hopefully promotion's going to start in the next couple weeks, and the release date will be rising, and it's going to be out this summer, just in time for the second wave of lockdowns.
Yay!
Yay! Watch it multiple times.
So my question,
yes,
is how weird is that? How strange is it
to be wearing the jacket?
No, that when the adaptation happens, Stumptown, and I mean Whiteout, and this, and presumably more to come. So,
well, let's not count any chickens before they're hatched.
Knocking wood as we speak.
How weird is it?
It's got to be surreal.
There are times when it's just weird. There are times when, look, I mean, I think this has more to do with my personality than anything else. I was asked once, like, how can you write Batman knowing all these people are going to read it? And I go, and I kind of looked at the person and I was like, I don't think about that. I just don't think about, which is in effect me saying, you don't enter into my thinking when I am doing my job, right? I have many flaws. I think arguably this one might be a really good defense mechanism, is I'm really good at ignoring things that are right in front of me. Like I can totally blinder it. Right. So everybody around me, for instance, we can be on set in trying to think of the places, because Leo arrived in London. I went out to London in June of last year, and technically I was going out because I was owed a set visit. But I had written the screenplay, and to give you guys an idea of how Hollywood works, I had written the screenplay, done the second draft, worked on the draft with the director once the director had come on board, gotten fired. The writer who replaced me had gotten fired. The writer who replaced him had gotten fired, and I had begun working again on the movie in May, right? So when I got out to England for the set visit, I was supposed to be there for a week. And it's a courtesy, right? But I arrived doing work, and I arrived being asked to do more work. I was being asked to do revisions on set. And this is not, people go like, oh my God, they're rewriting on this. Guys, it's called making a movie. It's just, you're constantly revising any artistic endeavor. So that is not a crisis thing. And then the second week was supposed to be a holiday. My family was going to come out, and we were going to spend a week in England. And on the second day, on the second day of said holiday, I got a call saying, we want you to stay on for effectively another 3 weeks, and we're rehiring you if you're willing. And I was like, sure, because what am I going to say? No, Mm-hmm. So I was there and sort of interacting with the production, and had been for a week. And there's always a moment the first time you walk in, like when you and I went to see Stumptown, mm-hmm. when they were filming in Portland. The first day I arrived at the location they were filming at in England, there's always a moment of like, oh, this is weird. Mm-hmm. Right? And of illusion, like when you step into the make-believe of it. So for the old guard, when I arrived on set, they were filming at an estate about, I want to say about an hour outside of London. And it was an old small castle, but there were all these other buildings on the estate. And as a result, the whole location was being used to double for like 8 different places in the screenplay. Right.
Okay.
And and it works fantastically, mind you. And one of the locations in the film, which was a change from the comic book, was a place that actually Gareth,
our mutual friend Gareth Michael Skarka,
yes, had dug up for me on research, because I had hired him to do some research. Is this village outside of Paris, about a half an hour outside of Paris, called Goussainville. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. Something with the Pays or whatnot. So it's a ghost town. And it's been a ghost town for like 50 years now, because it's right in the Charles de Gaulle flight path. And so that was killing this little village. And then, like in the 1972 or 73 Paris Air Show, there was a Soviet SST accident, and literally debris came down in the town and pretty much killed like 23 people, including, children at school. So that was it. It killed the town dead. But this place actually exists. It's this abandoned town. So we were using that location, but you can't. They didn't want to pay to go to France and shoot there. So when I arrive on set the first day, they've dressed it to look like this ghost town, and it does. I mean, it does, because this is what these people do professionally. So in that moment, you go like, okay, this is crazy. But that, for me, goes pretty quickly. And then what happens is I sort of take delight in watching other people be delighted by it. So like Leo's whole time in England, and I understand when he went to Marrakesh as well when they were shooting in Morocco, was, eyes as big as saucers and a big dopey grin on his face the whole time. And maybe it's because I was doing work. Maybe it's because I'm a little less, and maybe I'm just jaded, or maybe it's just because I got the blinders on. But I absolutely acknowledge it's surreal. But it's also, I mean, when it happens, it also becomes somebody else's. It's not yours.
Yeah.
It belongs to other people. And when that happens, you have to let go, right? I mean, you have to. It goes back to that mine thing, right? It's not mine. It is because
50 other people have been hammering nails into wood and painting sets and stitching costumes, and yeah.
So if I ever get to a place where I am doing a show, that is mine, that will be, I think, a very different experience to go in and say, here is the concept, this is the script, we are shooting it, this is all, where I have been able to exert myself over that much of it. I suspect that will be a different feeling. But I think the other thing that happens in all sort of creative endeavor is that you hit a point where you got to let it go. And it's great that they're making a movie. I've got to move on to the next thing anyway, right? We are like sharks. We keep swimming.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Fair enough. Changing gears a little bit here. What are you currently reading comics-wise? Anything?
Since lockdown, I haven't read any comics since the lockdown started. Which I suppose is a horrible, horrible, guilty admission. And in point of fact, I need to talk to you about, what I need to pick up.
Oh, all right.
I've been really loving Monstrous. Really, really, really enjoying it. I'm trying to think what else. Not a lot right now. Been reading a lot more fiction. You know, I finally picked up Jack Vance, so I'm trying to struggle through Jack Vance right now, and it is a struggle. I'll admit it. For me, I think that flowery prose does not good prose make. Right? You know, it's like
it was of its time.
Yeah.
It was very much
well,
of its time.
I'm not even sure it's of its time as much as it is of its genre at the time. So I'm trying to. I am literally struggling through that. I've got a whole stack of books by the side of the bed right now, and I'm trying to figure out. Oh yeah, no, you know what I just finished reading that I just blew me away. Was True Grit. Actually reading Portis's True Grit.
Oh, it's such a great book. Yeah.
It is unbelievably good. Just from a craft perspective, it is criminally well done. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
it's your magic trick, right?
It's absolutely a magic trick. There's no author there. I don't know who this Charles Portis guy is, but that ain't who wrote the book. The book was written by a woman named Maddie Ross.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, but you know, who's in her 70s, is a cranky Presbyterian bank owner, you know, and you know is missing one arm. That's who this book is by. Charles Portis just happened to be in the room to take it down, I guess. You know, and I am. I'm still sort of thrilling from how good it is. And that's half my problem these days is I don't want to read stuff that doesn't give me that. I don't want to have to search for why this book is important. You know, why this book is good. I don't want to have to work that hard at it. There are too many books out there. I want to read something that I'm going to enjoy and be delighted by and impressed by. I do not feel that there is an obligation to learn the canon. You know,
okay.
I will accept absolutely that one should sample from the deli tray that is on offer. But you know what? If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. You shouldn't have to, you know, hammer yourself in any soft part of your anatomy if it's not working for you. And I feel that even more about comics. And honestly, look, you know, and I know this is a horrible thing to say on Free Comic Book Day. I had a lot of really bad comics, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to make a bad one than to make a good one.
Sturgeon's Law, 90% of everything is not good. So.
Yeah, and that's true. So I tend to be really careful about what I'm picking up. And it weighs heavily. You know, the worst thing about being in comics is you know how the sausage is made. Yeah. You have no idea how many times I've had to bite my tongue on the Lazarus Discord when people are like, oh, I love this creator. They're so great. And it's like, that person is human excrement. I can't say that, but I know it.
You just did. I have it on tape.
Right. Well, no name was made, you know. And I'm sure they feel the same about me.
So let's say over the last decade, let's widen the scope a little bit. What do you think is the book that's flown the most under the radar, the comic that's flown the most under the radar that you think should have gotten more attention?
In the last 10 years?
Or, you know, as recent or as far back as you want to go. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to widen the field for you.
This is a cheat. I thought Fractions November, which came out only a couple months ago, did not get nearly the attention it deserved. I think it is remarkable. And I think it's a remarkable act of craftsmanship. Just narrative construction, what he and Elsa have done with that. And I believe there are another 2 volumes planned. and I'll be very, very interested to see how the lattice work forms. Um, but I say that also not knowing, for instance, how much press it maybe did get, because I tend to keep my head down on this stuff. Like, I'm not on a lot of the social media. I don't go to comic book sites anymore. I just don't do it. Right? It's as much for my mental and emotional health as anything else. So I don't know how it was received. I just know that when I read it, and Matt gave me an advance of it, I was kind of blown away.
Well, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
And on that note, I have held you up for about an hour. So
you have for about an
you
hour.
Have done yeoman's service, sir. Thank you very much for participating in our free
happy,
comic book day.
Yeah, happy free comic book day. Sorry for the naughty words.
Yeah, they've heard them.
I forgot it wasn't just you and me talking is the problem here.
Well, that's a high praise indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and have a good day. Best to the family.
Absolutely. Cheers.